It is a great pleasure to address such a distinguished audience of famous experts on international relations and foreign policy. But clearly it is a great challenge as well. One suggests that remarks should start with a joke, so I should compare myself to my situation on talking to you about regional affairs on an attempt to impress Paganini with a violin play. But nevertheless, I will do my best, also keeping in mind that talking just before lunch break puts another limitations in terms of the time exposure for these remarks. Given my current position, I will try to focus on fundamental link connecting education to development and leadership. If one is comparing the list of the most developed nations with the list of the nations with the most developed educational system, we will see probably very little disagreement between these two lists. And I think it is of no coincidence. And I think it helps us better understand the factors and explaining and determining also global success and failure stories as well. Azerbaijan is a young state and an ancient nation. And having restored our independence and sovereignty, we were honored with a great privilege. The size of our country, as we all know, is not that large on the world scale, and although population is growing and demographics are positive, again, we are not, we do not claim to be among the world leaders. We live in a famously volatile neighborhood, and not all of our immediate neighbors do actually subscribe to our concept of secular democracy, tolerance, market economy, and peaceful coexistence. The wider area just a step beyond South Caucasus can unfortunately be pointed to as living in a state of turmoil, at least for the last 3 years, with no looks like no light at the end of the tunnel. And to survive and prosper under these demanding circumstances, we must build up our capacities and capabilities and try, and we believe, do it in the most independent manner as possible. This will not be possible without a strong society consisting of educated individuals. Only an educated individual can serve well his country, can make a good parent to raise the children, be a good soldier to protect the country, but again, above all, to be a good citizen to serve the nation. Speaking of the concept of the good citizenship, again, I will revert to my very first public remark as a Minister of Education, which happened on 17th May in this very academy. We do believe that when we look at the United Nations, which today comprises of almost 200 member states, all of which are considered equally sovereign and independent, the harsh reality, however, is that the vast number of these states are either failed or failing due to a dangerous mix of political instability, economic inefficiency, acute poverty, corruption, armed violence, proliferation of diseases. And the situation demonstrates vividly that it takes educated citizens to make responsible choices and far-sighted decisions about their common future as a nation. These decisions are best produced as a result of a rational debate, participants of which resort to facts and arguments rather than to intimidation and violence. Therefore, education represents the best investment that a society as a whole can make to ensure its future well-being. Now, obviously, the problem sometimes elected politicians would have with it is that the returns on such investment do not necessarily coincide with the election terms. But I think education is a sine qua non, which makes sure that your country does not turn into a helpless spectator confined to only observing the process and hoping for an outcome not entirely negative, but become an actor forming the process and making sure that the outcome is a good and a desired one. Well, it makes me proud as a citizen to say that Azerbaijan belongs to the latter group as a result of its consistent efforts in the fields. I know my colleague Shahmar Mevsumov was speaking here yesterday on the joint project, namely on the state program to running under the slogan of "Let's turn black gold into human capital," put forward by President Ilham Aliyev. And I think that is just one, but very important example of the deliberate choices that this country is making and ways how it sees to bridge the gaps in knowledge, in technological development, but also probably in a way to adjust and address to a changing, very rapid social economic context of the society as Azerbaijan transforms from one set of values and systems to a different one. Obviously, this is a short-term measure, but it is a very important short-term measure because it will help us accumulate sufficient experience and expertise to create and develop the domestic centers of excellence, again, as the one where we present today. And in being the ministry and as a Minister of Education, definitely we will be doing our best to support local universities and local excellence centers, not just by sending and encouraging our students to go abroad and study in the best universities in the world, but actually trying to also contribute to engaging the best professors, working with the best students and with any student in this country. To do this, to achieve success in what we're trying to do, we need first to help match the educational system with the needs of the community, be it business community, be it in public domain. And the educational institutions must produce graduates who will have no trouble finding decent paying jobs, and this shall represent the best possible measurement of their relevance and efficiency. Clearly, it is much easier to say than to achieve because we are facing the environment when very often universities produce whom they can produce, not whom they need to produce. And changing the approach, changing the mentality, but first of all, the systems of incentives in order to achieve this target is one of the top priorities. In their turn, employers will have to support morally and encourage financially those institutions who produce the graduates better prepared for their first employment opportunity, which in many cases turns out to be the most important one. And this will create an ideal win-win situation with the entire nation, getting an ultimate profit of it. I hope that I was able to present my case arguing for a vital importance of education in international relations, since it represents a key building block for a system that reacts adequately to the evolving challenges. The road to peace, security, and stability in the world starts in schools. And as John Kennedy said, a child miseducated is a child lost.